everybody. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me for part 2 of the Erin Patterson case/trial. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I highly suggest you check it out, or most of this won't make sense because 1 always comes before 2. And today we're diving even deeper into one of the most twisted, baffling, and talked about cases in recent Australian history. In part 1, we went through the incredible and disturbing story of how, on July 29, 2023, Erin Patterson served a homemade beef Wellington to 4 lunch guests, her former in-laws, Don and Gal Patterson, and Gal's sister and brother-in-law, Heather and Ian Wilkinson. Now, within 24 hours, all 4 were violently ill. Within a week, Don, Gal, and Heather were dead, and Ian Wilkinson survived, but just barely. And Erin? She was the only person at the table who didn't seem to be affected. And from that moment, she became the center of a murder investigation. Authorities suspected that the meal contained death cap mushrooms, one of the deadliest fungi in the world, and the evidence quickly began to stack up. Erin admitted to discarding a food dehydrator in the days following the poisonings. Her story about where the mushrooms came from kept changing. She claimed she served her children leftovers from the same dish, but scraped off the mushrooms, even though she allegedly thought she had food poisoning from that meal. And then came the revelation that her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, had nearly died the year before after reportedly eating a meal prepared by Erin. In part 1, we also learned about the cracks in Erin and Simon's relationship, the tensions over money, child support, family loyalty, and her growing resentment towards the very people who would soon end up in the ICU. We followed Erin's internet search history, her Facebook posts about dehydrating mushrooms, her alleged lie about having cancer, and the chilling detail that she served single-portion beef Wellingtons, possibly, and actually, in my opinion, to control exactly who got which plate and to make sure she wouldn't get any of the poisoned beef Wellington. And that's where we left off, with Erin under suspicion, Simon speaking out, and a courtroom ready to unpack one of the most sinister cases in recent memory. But today, in part 2, we have even more to discuss. Erin's phone activity and the mysterious disappearance of her primary device, the forensic timeline that investigators laid out in court, and the tangled web of half-truths and contradictions that just keep coming. So let's get into it, but first, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Saley. Today's video is sponsored by Saley, and if you've ever tried to stay connected while traveling through Europe, then you already know the struggle. You land in Paris, no service, then hop a train to Belgium, still no service. By the time you hit Prague, you've got 7 SIM cards, 3 roaming charges, and no idea which one actually works. It's chaos. That's why I'm obsessed with Saley. It's a smart eSIM app that keeps you connected wherever you go in Europe or anywhere around the world without having to swap SIM cards every time you cross a border. You just install it once, pick a regional plan, and boom, instant data coverage across multiple countries. Saley is a game-changing eSIM app that keeps you connected without you having to wrestle with SIM cards, shady airport booths, or those Wi-Fi rental boxes that may or may not work depending on the alignment of the planets. And here's how it works, literally as easy as 1, 2, 3. Download the Saley app and use code stephanieharlowe at checkout for 15% off. And just like that, you're connected in London, Rome, Amsterdam. No roaming fees, no scary SIM booths, and no praying for Wi-Fi in weird train stations. I set mine up in about 90 seconds, faster than it took for me to realize the free Wi-Fi at the train station was actually just an elaborate scam to sell me crypto. Never again. And once the eSIM is installed, that's it. You don't have to install a new one for every country. Just one app, one setup, many, many snacks, and crime documentaries streamed with ease. It works on iOS and Android. The plans are crazy affordable, and there's even a 24/7 support chat. So if you've got travel coming up or you just want to stop relying on coffee shop Wi-Fi like it's 2007, scan the QR code on screen or go to saley.com/stephanieharlowe and use code stephanieharlowe at checkout for 15% off your plan. Seriously, traveling is stressful enough. Your phone shouldn't ghost you in Barcelona. Check Saley out. Thank you so much to Saley for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive in. By August 3rd, 2023, with multiple patients in critical condition and the same meal linked to them all, Victoria Police officially opened a homicide investigation into the circumstances surrounding the lethal lunch. Law enforcement would announce that Erin Patterson was a suspect because she'd cooked the meal at her home and she had not become ill. On this same day, Erin moved the SIM card out of a tablet and into a Samsung phone that was referred to as Phone B during the trial. As a quick reminder, there were 3 cell phones associated with Erin Patterson. Phone A was a pink Samsung Galaxy that Erin had been using since she bought it in February of 2023. Phone B was another Samsung that Erin had used before purchasing her new one, and in February of 2023, that device was factory reset so that Erin's son could use it. On August 2nd, Erin factory reset Phone B again. She would claim that she was preparing to put it back in use because her pink Samsung was just not cutting it, even though the pink Samsung was, 6 months old, less than 6 months old. And then the next day, August 3rd, she put a SIM card that had been in a tablet into Phone B, meaning instead of moving her primary SIM from Phone A to Phone B, she used a secondary SIM that would not even be connected to her primary phone number. Now, on August 4th, Heather Wilkinson was the first of the lunch guests to sadly pass away, and this happened at 2:50 a.m. This is also the day that police recovered the black Sunbeam food dehydrator from the Kunwara transfer station and put it into evidence for testing. At 4:47 p.m., Erin Patterson was briefly interviewed by police, and they told her they were trying to understand why she wasn't sick. And Erin once again denied foraging for mushrooms. She even denied ever using a food dehydrator, ever dehydrating food, which is ridiculous because not only was there a paper trail for that purchase, but she had talked about it with her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, and she talked about it with her Facebook friends. Because remember, she talked about in the Facebook group, I've been dehydrating mushrooms and powdering them and putting them in everything. She put up pictures of the food dehydrator in the Facebook group. And I believe it was August 1st when she talked about it with Simon Patterson when they were all at Monash Hospital. And during a police search of Erin's house, which would happen the next day, they found the manual for the Sunbeam food dehydrator in a drawer in Erin's kitchen. So obviously, stupid lie. So when asked if she understood why they were talking to her that day, Erin replied, quote, "Yes, but I've never been in a situation like this before. I've been very, very helpful with the health department during the week because I do want to know what happened. I've given them as much info as they've asked for," end quote. Oh yes, Erin, we know. You gave them tons of info. Random, pointless info that would send them on a wild goose chase looking for the phantom Chinese grocer you bought pretend dried mushrooms from. So the police also told Erin that Simon, her estranged husband, had raised questions about why she'd invited his family members to lunch on July 9th, to which Erin replied, quote, "They've always been very good to me. I want to maintain those relationships despite what's happening with Simon. I love them a lot. They've always been really good to me and always said they would support me. I really appreciate that because both my parents are gone, my grandparents are gone. They're the only family I've got. I think Simon hated that," end quote. So at 5:55 p.m. that night, Gail Patterson also passed away, and the following morning at 11:30 a.m., her husband, Don Patterson, also died. And this was the day that police executed a search warrant at Erin's home where they recovered several electronic devices as well as other items of interest. For instance, Erin had told the police that she'd used the Recipe Tin Eats cookbook dinner to find the instructions to prepare the beef Wellington, and the police located this cookbook and they found that page 252, which had the recipe for beef Wellington, was splattered with food stains as if someone had it open while they were actively cooking. The police also said that when they searched the kitchen, they did not see any gray plates like the ones that Ian Wilkinson had described Erin serving their beef Wellingtons on. And at first I was confused about that, but then I remembered part of the trial testimony I'd heard where they said that Erin had actually paid several visits to the same landfill that she threw the food dehydrator out in. And that's when I also found that there was CCTV footage of Erin Patterson at the Kunwara transfer station and landfill, and And this was taken at 3:30 p.m. on the exact same afternoon of the lunch, July 29th. This was just 30 minutes after Erin's guests had departed, which is crazy, right? Because now we kind of know what she was doing there 30 minutes after her lunch guests left. The police and prosecution and Stephanie Harlowe believe that this was when Erin got rid of her 4 gray dinner plates hidden in a cardboard box, and she was also seen throwing out the package of the food dehydrator, but she forgot about the manual, and she forgot about the receipt, and she forgot about all the pictures she took of it, and she forgot about talking about it with her friends in the Facebook group. I mean, she probably didn't forget these things, but she was just mitigating whatever disaster she could at that point. Now let's talk about Erin and her many phones and SIM switching shenanigans. So Detective Acting Sergeant Stephen Eppingstall testified that while he and other law enforcement were in Erin's home for about 4 hours executing the search warrant, Erin had her phone with her most of the time, and she was not prevented from using it. There was also a period of at least about 20 minutes where she was on her cell phone alone in a room, unobserved. Now, before leaving, the police asked for Erin's cell phone, the one she used regularly on the day-to-day, the one she'd had at the hospital with her, the one she'd been using for months before this day, the one she'd been using since February of 2023. And they were going to take this phone with them along with other electronics they'd recovered, such as a laptop and a tablet. So she handed over her phone, but it was not phone A. It wasn't the pink Samsung phone she'd been using since February of 2023. It was phone B, the other Samsung, which she had stopped using the previous February, the one she had factory reset on August 2nd, the one that she had not put her own SIM in, but a secondary SIM from a tablet. Now, according to records from the telephone company, Erin had moved her primary SIM from phone A while the police were at her home searching it, and she had put that SIM card into phone C, a Nokia device. So phone B, which was the one Erin gave the police when they asked for her primary device, this was not the phone with her real SIM in it. This was not the phone she had been using during, the lunch, during the months leading up to the lunch. They took that back to the police station and securely locked it up in Eppingstall's locker. He would testify that he was the only one who had control over that locker or access to that locker. Not only did she give them a phone that had already been factory reset twice since she'd used it, but then she ran a factory reset again on August 5th before she handed it over, which I assume is what she was doing when she was in a room pretending to make arrangements for her daughter. Like, I guess her daughter had dance or something, and Erin was like, I'm going to go in this room alone for 20 minutes and make arrangements for my daughter to go to her dance class or whatever. And I think that during that 20 minutes, she was factory resetting the phone again. And then get this, she conducted a remote factory reset on phone B the next day on August 6th while the phone was still in police custody sitting in Detective Eppingstall's locker. So it's very important to also know that phone A, the device Erin was primarily using, the device she was using during the period where she would have been planning and executing her murder plot, it was never found or recovered by police. Never. So that's interesting. Basically, by this time, the police are on to Erin and everything she was doing, everything she was saying, all the evidence pointed to her being suspicious AF. They had collected the food dehydrator from the landfill. That was tested for signs of death cap mushrooms. A forensic analysis showed traces of death cap mushroom toxins in the dehydrator, and DNA tests showed a 99% match to death cap mushroom DNA. Now, the remnants of the beef Wellington lunch that had been recovered from Erin's garbage and transferred to Monash Hospital with her were also tested. On July 31st, mycologist Dr. Camille Trong was contacted by Dr. Veronica Foote, who sent her some photos of the beef Wellington meal. But Dr. Trong said, obviously she was unable to identify whether there were death cap mushrooms in the beef Wellington from just visibly looking at a photo. So Dr. Foote had the leftovers sent to the Royal Botanical Gardens, where Dr. Trong worked. But by the time the evidence arrived, Dr. Trong had already left work. So she arranged for a colleague to deliver the leftovers to her home, where she could conduct an initial assessment with a microscope she had there. During this initial assessment, Dr. Trong could not find any evidence of death cap mushrooms. Because she was working in the field the following day, she was unable to examine the leftovers until August 2nd when she brought them back to a lab at the Royal Botanical Gardens and examined the leftover meal again. During the second analysis, Dr. Trong again said she found no signs of death caps. She could only find field mushrooms, which were commonly sold in supermarkets. So you might be thinking, oh no, this is a win for Erin. There were no death cap mushrooms in the beef Wellington. But no, you would be wrong. Remember, Dr. Trong would have only been able to inspect the whole mushrooms or the chunks of mushrooms found in the meal. But we know our girl Erin Patterson was big on dehydrating mushrooms and then turning them into a powder and then hiding them in people's food without them knowing, which is weird, by the way. Okay, let me stop here for a second because I've been thinking about this a lot. Do we want our kids to eat healthier? Would we want our kids to be like eating certain foods? Maybe they're not getting enough nutrients. You know, the kids don't like mushrooms, but Erin's like, mushrooms are really good for you. Erin's obsessed with mushrooms. She's the mushroom lady. Do you know the mushroom man? It's Erin Patterson. She loves mushrooms. She does everything with mushrooms. She's hiding them in cookies. She's hiding them in brownies. She's hiding them in all sorts of food, trying to trick her kids into eating these mushroom muffins, okay? Allegedly, that's what she told Simon. I think that's weird to begin with. It's a weird control freak thing. Like, yeah, you want your kids to eat good, but do you directly lie to them and go to all the trouble of dehydrating and turning into powder a food you know they don't like and then hiding it in their food and serving it to them as some like weird experiment? Like, can she tell? Can she tell that the food she hates is in these muffins? I think it's weird. I think it's weird and a little bit of like, I like to be in control and in power over others. I know what's best for them. They need to just trust me and turn their lives over to me. And I am smarter than everyone. And so I know what's best for everyone. And they need to just deal with me hiding mushrooms in their food. So yeah, I think that's weird to begin with, that you would do that. And once again, it does not help her case. Her doing that and telling her Facebook friends and telling Simon Patterson that she's been dehydrating, drying mushrooms and turning them into a powder and hiding them and everything. It's really bad considering what happened to her lunch guests. So if Erin took the death cap mushrooms and dehydrated them and then turned them into a powder and then hid them in the beef Wellington, it would have been actually impossible for Dr. Trong to see death cap mushrooms as they had been turned into a powder, which would have melted into the sauce. Now, Dr. Dimitri Gerostamoulis, head of forensic science and chief toxicologist at the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine, he also tested the Wellington leftovers, which he received on August 29th, and he explained how the testing process worked. He said that when testing for death cap mushrooms, the Institute looks for the presence of certain amatoxins using chemical analysis, not visual analysis, and chemical analysis is the gold standard for detecting these amatoxins. The three primary amatoxins found in death caps are alpha-amanitin, which is the most toxic and abundant amatoxin in death caps and the primary cause of liver failure in mushroom poisoning cases. Also, beta-amanitin, which is less abundant than alpha but still highly toxic, and gamma-amanitin, which will be present in smaller quantities but still contributes to toxicity. So Dr. Gerostamoulis said, quote, "We undertake an analysis at much lower levels than what the naked eye can detect. We rely on sensitive instruments to be able to detect very low quantities that were not visible. We're looking for chemical compounds. They are not visible," end quote. So when asked about the lethal dose of amatoxins, he said that a lethal dose for a 150-pound adult would be about 3 tablespoons, but the exact lethal dose would depend on how much of the toxins are actually there and present in each part of the mushroom. And he said, quote, "Less than 10% of the mushroom is actually containing the alpha-amanitin and beta-amanitin. They can be detected in the body. They have a very short half-life, so they don't stay in the body for a long time, usually remaining in the urine for a few days," end quote. Dr. Gerostamoulis also analyzed antemortem and postmortem samples from the victims of Erin Patterson's lethal mushroom lunch. So antemortem would be obviously before they died, when they were being treated in the hospital, and then postmortem would be after they died. And these samples included urine, stomach contents, small sections of the liver, and fluid from the eye. These samples were tested for alpha-amytin and beta-amytin, and Don Patterson's ante-mortem urine sample showed clear detection of both amatoxins, but post-mortem blood and serum samples collected days after Don had arrived at the hospital did not. So the jury was told that blood samples collected after 24 hours are unlikely to show these amatoxins, and they would persist in the urine for a little bit longer. According to a toxicology analysis, both the meat and mushroom paste found in the leftovers tested positive for beta-amytin. So the meat and the leftovers have these amatoxins in them, right? But the mushrooms that were visibly looked at were not death caps. That's because she turned them into powder and put them in. Now, also, Gail and Heather's samples did not show the presence of any amatoxins, but they'd been tested between 25 and 32 hours after the lunch, and this has always been a challenge when you're detecting death cap mushroom poisoning. Amatoxins, particularly alpha-amytin, are rapidly absorbed and distributed in the body after ingestion, but despite their fast action, they don't remain in the bloodstream or even in urine for very long. In blood and serum, they can be detected for up to 12 to 48 hours after ingestion, with peak concentration usually occurring 6 to 12 hours post-exposure. Now, like we talked about, urine has a longer detection window than blood. It's detectable for up to 96 hours in some cases. The amatoxins are not metabolized, so they're excreted unchanged, mostly through the urine. Because of the narrow window, early sample collection is critical for detection and diagnosis when you're dealing with death cap mushrooms. And it doesn't take a scientist to understand that if these amatoxins were found in Don Patterson's and also Ian Wilkinson's samples, and all four guests ate the same meal and suffered from the same symptoms, they would have all had these toxins in their systems at some point. It's just an issue with when they were tested, when the samples were taken, when they were analyzed, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I don't think anybody is sitting here and being like, oh, well, Gail and Heather didn't have any signs of these amatoxins in their body, therefore they died from nothing. We know that they died from death cap mushroom poisoning, just like Don Patterson and just like Ian Wilkinson, who did not die but was suffering from death cap mushroom poisoning. All right. Now let's talk about Erin and her defense team's rebuttals to all of this evidence. The defense team and Erin Patterson claimed that the lunch was a terrible accident and a tragedy. Yes, Erin lied about dumping the food dehydrator after lunch. Yes, she lied about foraging for mushrooms. Yes, she lied about having cancer. But she did not deliberately seek out death cap mushrooms. Now, sadly, this trial was not televised, so we didn't get to see Erin and her testimony in person in all its glory, but those present in the courtroom have been kind enough to describe how things went down. Claire Harvey, who's host of the Australian's daily news podcast, The Front, talked about Erin's demeanor in moments of ridiculousness. Harvey said that throughout the entire trial, Erin sat watching from the dock, and Harvey said, quote, she had observed the jovial, collegial atmosphere that emerges in long trials. The judge, lawyers, and even some witnesses naturally become familiar with one another, and the odd laugh emerges. When Detective Senior Constable Stephen Eppingstall was in the witness box, he charmed the jury with apparent ease. They chuckled at his self-deprecating asides, like when he said his boss didn't like him spending too much money. Patterson clearly thought that she too could get the odd laugh out of the jury. She described on the evening before the fatal lunch trying to talk to her son and having to lift one headphone can off his ear to tell him something. The jury didn't laugh. She mentioned a building professional looking at the plans she'd drawn up for her dream home and telling her they were hopeless. Not a chuckle. Similarly, Patterson's few moments of breathy tearfulness and distress seemed to fall flat, end quote. And Claire Harvey goes on to explain how it was very odd because Erin stayed calm, like the entire time. Very calm, very collected. She spoke clearly. Her voice really never wavered. She seemed confident and fine and not distressed at all. But there were moments where she would pretend to be upset and try to almost summon tears. And act like she was, having a hard time. And in cases where this would happen with witnesses, usually the judge would be like, hey, can we get a break so this witness can collect themselves? But the judge didn't even do that in this case because no one seemed to be buying that Erin was genuinely having an emotional moment or struggling with her emotions. Nobody bought that. So apparently also Erin was trying everything under the sun to seem relatable or to come up with reasons why she behaved in ways that no one could understand. At one point, the prosecutor, Nanette Rogers, was questioning Erin, and Erin interrupted her and was like, hey, can you actually move the microphone away from your mouth, because the microphone is blocking your mouth and I'm kind of hearing impaired and I read lips sometimes. So could you move the microphone so I can read your lips? And everyone was like, well, what? We've been doing this trial for weeks. No one's ever heard about you being hearing impaired. No one from her life ever heard about her being hearing impaired. But now suddenly she's interrupting proceedings to ask the prosecutor to move the mic so she can read her lips. And it just seemed like efforts for Erin to try to make people feel bad for her, for Erin to try to show I have these issues. I think there was some talk about her possibly being on the spectrum. Yeah. Which she could very well be, who isn't these days? Aren't we all? But once again, I don't like when people use being on the spectrum or being neurodivergent or having a mental illness as a reason for why they've done something wrong, why they've been dishonest, why they can't remember certain things, and they kind of use it as an excuse in criminal trials specifically, right? All of a sudden, nobody ever knew you were hearing impaired or had these issues, and now you need the prosecutor to move the mic away from her mouth so you can read her lips. Yeah, weird. And I think that the exact words, I don't know what the exact words that Erin used were, but she said, I do a bit of lip reading. I can do a bit of lip reading, just on the side as a hobby. I do a bit of crocheting. I do a bit of diamond painting. I do a bit of cricket on the side, It's just this little hobby of lip reading because of this apparent hearing impairment that no one had ever heard of before, pun not intended, actually. So Claire Harvey from the podcast, the Australians podcast, she said that under cross-examination, Erin, quote, twisted and turned, disputing almost every contention, however petty, put to her by prosecutor Nanette Rogers. The performance showed her to be a peculiar character, undoubtedly intelligent and highly calculating, yet simultaneously cold, prickly, and socially awkward, end quote. So the cancer thing, right? Erin claimed that she did lie about how bad it was. And she kind of goes back and forth on this. She waffles a little bit. She's like, I don't think I ever said directly I had cancer. But then the prosecution's like, hey, is this you texting your mother-in-law, Gal Patterson, about how you have to do a needle biopsy? Hey, is this you not actually having ever done a needle biopsy and having no appointments and having no evidence or signs or documentation that you had cancer or that anybody told you had cancer? Is this you? And then Erin was like, yeah, well, I may have exaggerated, right? So Erin claimed she may have exaggerated about how bad the cancer was, or the fact that she even had cancer. She exaggerated, even though she had been concerned in the past that she could have cancer. Erin's got to let you know that. She's like, please don't get it twisted. Don't think that I never thought I had cancer, because multiple times throughout my life, I've been concerned that I may. So it's not like I just made this up and it was never a valid concern. But anyways, Erin said that she kind of let the Pattersons and the Wilkinsons believe during this lunch that she could have cancer, and she let the story ride because she was planning to get gastric bypass surgery, and she wanted to keep the help and support from her in-laws that she knew they would offer if she pretended she was going in for cancer treatment, not weight loss surgery. Now listen, I don't believe this for a moment. It's absolute bullshit, but even if it was true, that's still really messed up, okay? That is messed up. I needed help. And she literally says this, I knew I was going to need help, getting the kids to and from school and to and from events and things. And I knew after the surgery, I'd be, out of commission for a while, even though that's not true either. So I let them think I had cancer so they would help me after the surgery. once again, I don't believe this. It's an absolutely ridiculous story. If it was true and she's testifying about this with a straight face, like it's the better alternative, it's still really shitty and it's not something a good person would do. And so, like, this isn't the flex you think it is. It's not making you look any better. Like, to me, it's just parallel bad stuff, like lying about cancer to convince your former in-laws or your estranged in-laws to come over so you can poison them, lying about cancer so that your in-laws will continue helping you and supporting you even though that's not what's happening and you're not sick with cancer. They're both bad. They're both really bad. But anyways, this gastric bypass surgery is very interesting. And the prosecutor, Nanette Rogers, she came in hot with this evidence because Erin had claimed that she'd booked an appointment at the Enrich Cosmetic Clinic in Melbourne to undergo this gastric bypass surgery in early September of 2023. And then Nanette Rogers informed Erin and everyone else in the courtroom, hey, the Enrich Clinic in Melbourne does not offer gastric bypass surgery or gastric sleeve surgery. So what are you talking about? Like, you said you made an appointment. You said you were going in for this procedure, but this clinic doesn't even offer the procedure you said you were going to get done. And Erin was like, I am very puzzled by this. What could be going on here? This is very puzzling. Erin said she remembered making the appointment, and she said, quote, it would have been related to weight loss surgery. Perhaps it was a different procedure I was doing with them. I was looking into liposuction as well, end quote. This woman, man, okay, this woman. She has been saying gastric bypass surgery the whole trial. And don't you think if you were on trial for the murder of 3 people, you'd probably want to have these facts straight. That way you're not getting called out on cross-examination and made to look like an absolutely idiotic liar. And as far as I can tell, the Enrich Clinic in Melbourne doesn't offer liposuction either. So I don't know what the hell Erin was thinking with this. I don't know why her defense team allowed her to go on the stand and talk. I don't know why they let her do this, and I don't know why they didn't have her possibly run by them what she was going to say and what lies she had made up so that, everybody could be on the same page and make sure that there was, like, some support to these lies. I don't know what happened here, but it was a mess. I believe this was a lie. The Enrich Clinic and the gastric bypass surgery, this was a lie that Erin came up with far after she had been charged with these murders. I believe that she truly had believed that everyone she invited to that lunch was not going to survive. And she didn't think she was ever going to have to come up with like a fake story or an alternate story to why she told people she had cancer. So she didn't really do her research, which, remember, was something that the people in her true crime Facebook group said she was top notch at. And actually, not everybody in the Facebook true crime groups liked her. We're going to talk about that in a minute. It's actually kind of funny, but let's continue on with this. So yeah, I think that Erin just after she'd already been arrested and she figured out that Ian Wilkinson was still alive, so he's going to report back this I have cancer story that she told at lunch, and that Don Patterson had actually told Simon, his son, before he died that Erin had cancer. I don't think she thought that was going to happen. I don't think she actually knew how long this poisoning was going to take. She probably thought that the Pattersons and the Wilkinsons would go home after lunch, go to bed, get sick, and die at home. I don't think she anticipated them going into the hospital, being questioned by Simon, being questioned by doctors. I don't think she thought that was going to happen. But either way, until she got arrested and she was faced with the realization that all these people now knew she had talked about having cancer at lunch, and that wasn't true. She had to come up with an alternate story. This Enrich Clinic was the story she came up with because she had to do it quick, and it ended up not panning out at all. So Nanette Rogers also asked Erin about visiting the iNaturalist website, specifically pointing out the May 28th searches for the death cap mushrooms. And when she was asked if she'd gone to that website on May 28th, Erin said she couldn't remember. She might have, right? And this is a pattern with Erin Patterson. Once again, pun not intended. This is a pattern with Erin Patterson. Erin Patterson, if you will. Sorry. This is a pattern with her. She doesn't remember anything, right? She's able to recall certain details very vividly, right? But then also at the same time have zero memory of other details, such as, where she had purchased those dried mushrooms from, the fake ones that never existed, in my opinion. And we're going to come back to this, Erin forgetting everything, so put a pin in it. But yeah, Nanette Rogers is like, hey, did you visit this site on May 28th? And Erin's like, I don't know. I don't think I ever did visit it, but I may have visited it. I don't know. I could have visited it. Somebody else in my house could have done it. Could have been me. Could have been my son. Could have been me. I don't know. I can't remember. She won't directly answer and say that she visited the iNaturalist website and looked up death cap mushrooms. She won't directly answer, but once again, she looked pretty stupid because Nanette Rogers was like, hey, well, did you order food from this pub, this restaurant 3 minutes later? And Erin was like, yeah, I did. And she's like, okay, so it's fair to say that it was probably you on the computer. She's like, could have been. Once again, she won't answer directly. And according to the people who were there, she was very smug, very smug about it. Like, I don't remember. I don't recall exactly. Very like, haha, I'm going to plead the fifth and you can't do anything about it. But they can do things about it. They can point out that your memory is very vivid in some places and just completely void in others, which Nanette Rogers is going to do later. Nanette Rogers also asked Erin why she lied to the police and to medical staff and to the health department and to everyone about foraging for mushrooms. Because Erin had claimed to everyone she'd never foraged for mushrooms. But that wasn't true. And on the stand, Erin admitted that she had lied about foraging for mushrooms, but she denied, once again, intentionally seeking out and foraging death cap mushrooms. Erin said she had started foraging for mushrooms at trails and botanical gardens in early 2020, and then she joined Facebook groups to learn about the different kinds and types of mushrooms. And Erin also claimed she had now accepted that there may have been death cap mushrooms in the meal, mushrooms she had accidentally foraged, not knowing they were death caps. Erin said she had foraged for mushrooms and she had also bought dried mushrooms from a Chinese grocer. And Erin said that when she was preparing the beef Wellington, she tasted it and she said the taste seemed a little bland to her. So she decided to throw some dried mushrooms in that she'd brought from the grocer, right? And Erin said that she still had those dried mushrooms in the pantry and that she had also put some of her foraged mushrooms in that same Tupperware container, foraged mushrooms that she dried and then stored with the other dried mushrooms she got from the phantom Chinese grocer that doesn't exist. So Erin said this idea, this realization, it hadn't occurred to her until days later when her in-laws were getting worse and tests had suggested death cap mushroom poisoning. And Erin also testified and talked about speaking to Simon at the hospital on August 1st, and then the topic of the food dehydrator coming up. And Erin claims that Simon asked her, is that how you poisoned my parents? And this comment got Erin thinking how she had dried some foraged mushrooms in the dehydrator a few weeks prior. And Erin said, quote, I was starting to think, what if they'd gone in the same container with the Chinese mushrooms? Maybe that had happened, end quote. According to Erin, this made her feel very scared, not because people were dying and that she potentially was the reason why, but scared because CPS was involved at this point, and Simon seemed to really have it in his mind that Erin may have intentionally poisoned his relatives and, hey, tried to poison him too because she really wanted him there. She even made him his own portion of beef Wellington, right? Erin really wanted Simon there that day. And Simon was kind of talking to the police about this, and he's kind of asking Erin about this. And Nanette Rogers asked Erin, hey, you said you talked to Simon about this, dehydrating food and stuff, and this idea occurred to you on August 1st. If this had occurred to you on August 1st, why did you not tell anyone? Why did you keep lying about foraging for mushrooms? Why did you get rid of the evidence, aka the food dehydrator? And Rogers pointed out that at the time, even though medical professionals had confirmed their patients were suffering from serious toxin syndrome, they didn't immediately receive the antidote because there was a lack of evidence that they had ingested death cap mushrooms. So the medical staff was like, yeah, these people have been poisoned. This isn't food poisoning. This is like a toxin. But because they didn't know for sure yet that it was death cap mushrooms, they didn't give them the antidote. And if Erin had been like, oh, hey, I did forage for mushrooms and those could be death caps, they would have gotten the antidote sooner. Now, Erin said she didn't tell anyone at that point because she'd been informed that the sick patients were getting treated for poisoning. So she believed that this was already happening, right? She thought that they were already getting the help that they needed for the poisoning that they were experiencing. And it was kind of like, well, who's it going to help? Everything's already happening for them that can be happening for them. But if I come forward and tell the truth, like, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to me? And then Erin said she got rid of the food dehydrator, quote, in the context of thinking that maybe the mushrooms that I'd foraged or the meal I prepared was responsible for making people sick, end quote. Yeah, dude, we know that's why you got rid of the food dehydrator, because you knew you had dried mushrooms in it that made people sick, not because there was a possibility of it, because you absolutely knew. And once again, I don't think you anticipated that there was going to be this whole police investigation. And you had to sort of get rid of things really quickly without thinking and without realizing, hey, there's cameras here. Hey, there's still a manual for this food dehydrator at my house. Hey, people are going to figure this out when I don't get sick. I don't think she thought about that. And Erin said she kept lying after the Pattersons and Heather Wilkinson died because, quote, it was this stupid knee-jerk reaction to just dig deeper and keep lying. I was just scared, but I shouldn't have done it, end quote. Now here is another excuse Erin made, because in order to believe that she had not intentionally poisoned the beef Wellington, it would have to also be believed and understood that she'd consumed the same meal as everyone else, the same meal that she served her guests, and that she hadn't made herself an unpoisoned portion, which she served on a completely different dish, right? So Erin claimed she did eat the exact same food as her guests. She said the only reason she didn't get sick was because of her lifelong eating disorder that she had suffered with in secret and never told a soul about. Her bulimia that she had been suffering from in secret and in private for years. Erin claimed she'd always struggled with her self-image and her weight, and she'd been binging and purging for a long time, but no one ever knew, right? And after her lunch guests left, Erin claimed she consumed almost an entire orange cake that Gal Patterson had brought for the lunch, and then she made herself throw this cake up, and with it, the contents of the poisoned lunch she'd eaten before the cake. Logically, this is ridiculous, right? And Erin's talking about this on the stand, and she's like, I have this problem, and I binge and purge, and after the guests left, I was still hungry, so I had one piece of cake, and then I had another piece of cake, and then another piece of cake, and then another, and before I knew it, 3/4 of the cake was gone, and then I purged it, and in my vomit, I'm sure the lunch that I ate, the beef Wellington, the poisoned beef Wellington that I ate, also was expelled from my body. So logically, this is ridiculous. And medically, it doesn't even check out. If Erin had purged a few hours after, eating almost this entire cake, which is what she said she did, because she said she didn't start eating the cake until a few hours after her lunch guests had left. And then after she ate the cake, which, to eat 3/4 of a cake would still take quite a while, right? Like at least 20 minutes if you're just nonstop eating, at least 20 minutes. So then maybe 2.5 hours after she eats the poisoned beef Wellingtons, she's throwing up. If that was true, the amatoxins from the death caps would have already been absorbed into her bloodstream. It wouldn't matter if she threw it up. It wouldn't matter. After ingestion, amatoxins are detected in the blood within 30 minutes to 2 hours. So that means that the toxins are already going into your blood, usually within like a half an hour, okay? Really fast, real fast. According to toxicologists, vomiting after a few hours does not prevent poisoning. Only very early gastric lavage or activated charcoal administered within an hour or two after ingestion might help, and even then, there's no guarantee. So yeah, just puking up death cap mushrooms, that's not going to do it, because people get sick. They do. They get sick from death cap mushrooms. And within a few hours, usually they're feeling sick and they're starting to throw up already. So if that's just part of the symptoms, throwing up is not going to help save you from it. But once again, she's trying to act like it was like a couple hours later after she binged the cake, and maybe the cake helped shelter her from the poisoning. I don't know. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But once again, she's got to come up with some logical response to why she didn't get sick. Because if she'd eaten the same food as everybody, which would be the only way anybody would believe that she'd accidentally put death cap mushrooms into the beef Wellington, then she would have been sick. She would have been sick, and she may have died, like her in-laws and Heather Wilkinson. So Erin was also asked why she factory reset her phone so many times. And Erin used the same excuse as always. She was afraid she'd be blamed for poisoning her lunch guests intentionally. She said she knew there was photos of mushrooms on her phone. She knew there was photos of the food dehydrator on her phone. And she didn't want detectives to see these things and assume that she had premeditated the poisoning of her in-laws, which is exactly what happened, allegedly, in my opinion. I mean, she's been charged and found guilty, so that is what happened. But she didn't want them to think that's what happened, okay? She didn't want to get caught. But she's telling the jury and the prosecution, it's not because I was guilty and didn't want to get caught. It's because I didn't want to look guilty. I didn't want to look guilty. And she said because of this, she panicked and she factory reset her phone a bunch. And she's like, that makes sense, right? But then she also made a comment on how she felt it was silly and stupid on the part of the police that they hadn't put her phone in airplane mode after they'd taken it from her and put it in Eppingstall's locker, because she said this would have prevented her from remotely performing factory resets, so they should have done that. So she's like, it's your guys' fault. It's your guys' fault. I wouldn't have been able to factory reset my phone so many times and try to attempt to hide more evidence had you just put my phone in airplane mode when you took it from me. Like, duh. So smug. All right, let's come back to Erin and her bad memory for important things. And this is where Nanette Rogers, the prosecutor, came in clutch. So during her closing statements, Rogers told the jury, quote, even if you could accept that the precise location of the Asian grocer might not be easily remembered, you would think you would do everything you could to try and recall it for the sake of your very ill family members and for the sake of anyone else who might be exposed, end quote. And Rogers said that instead of racking her brain, instead of driving around looking for the grocer and trying to identify herself, Erin sat on her hands while Don, Gail, Ian, and Heather were all in comas. Nanette Rogers also talked to the jury about Erin Patterson's remarkable memory during her time in the witness box, how Erin seemed to recall dates, evidence, and details with ease, even when the prosecution had it wrong. And Rogers pointed out how Erin had even corrected her the previous week when they were discussing a certain date in April of 2023. And I think Nanette Rogers said it was like, I can't remember, like a Monday or something, and Erin had corrected Rogers on what day of the week it actually was. And in fact, there were a few times where Nanette Rogers got things wrong when questioning Erin, and then Erin, who believes she's smarter and quicker than everyone else, could not resist correcting the prosecutor. And I think that Nanette Rogers intentionally got small details wrong throughout her examination of Erin Patterson so she could illustrate to the jury that Erin Patterson actually was very smart, very intelligent. She actually had a very good memory, just not for details that could potentially incriminate her, like the fake Phantom store that she had bought the fake Phantom dried mushrooms from. Now, this is also important because Erin's reason for lying about everything was, I was scared. I was terrified. I was out of my mind. I couldn't sleep. I felt so bad. I felt so guilty. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I didn't want them to be hurt. I didn't want anything bad to happen to them, but I didn't want anything bad to happen to me. I didn't want to lose my kids. I didn't want to be arrested. I was terrified. Remember, she's calm as a cucumber this whole time. And the people who were in the courtroom said that they believed the jury had a hard time seeing this scared, distressed, terrified person that Erin Patterson described being the reason why she lied about everything, in the person sitting in the witness box who was well-spoken, very level, very calm, never kind of reactive or emotional. They could not marry those two people together. And in fact, I will also say that Simon Patterson had described his wife as possibly being on the spectrum, he felt, because she was like two different people. She was one person in private and another in public. And he said she was very good at acting like she enjoyed being places and like she enjoyed being with people. She was very good at pretending. But then in private, like it was very clear that she didn't want to do any of that stuff, which I totally relate to. Once again, like I am an introvert at heart. I have like a 90-minute socialization window before I'm like, get me the hell out of here. And I have to have one more small talk conversation. I'm going to scream and pull my hair out and run around in circles. And everybody's going to be like, what happened to that girl? Why is she acting crazy? I get that. And it's wearing a mask. Wearing a mask, you got to let people think that you like being there and stuff. But Simon said Erin was two different people. And the way that she could pretend and act like she was enjoying things and that like she liked things that he knew for a fact she absolutely didn't. It was kind of weird to him. Now, I do want to move on and talk about Simon Patterson, because if you remember, initially, Erin had been charged with the attempted murder of her estranged husband as well, because Simon believed that Erin had tried to poison him before. We talked about this a little bit in the first video I did about this case. But apparently during pretrial, so much more information came out that was suppressed from the main trial because apparently the judge felt that the charges concerning Simon Patterson should be tried separately. Now, it's kind of confusing because a lot of news outlets say that the charges of the attempted murder against Simon Patterson were dismissed completely. Some news sources say that the judge wanted them to be in a separate trial and didn't want the information from the alleged attempted poisonings of Simon Patterson to be involved in the murder charges against Erin for her lunch guests. So I'm not clear on that, but there's more information about Erin potentially, and I believe definitely trying to poison Simon Patterson. So we also found out that the judge had excluded a document from the main trial, and this had been a document found on Erin Patterson's laptop, her own computer, and this document was titled A Case Study: What Doses of Amatiaphthaloids and Amatoxins Are Lethal to Humans. What doses are lethal to humans? A document found on Erin Patterson's laptop. What? We did not hear about this because the defense argued that the document, the PDF, could have been accidentally downloaded for any reason by anyone on the laptop, and the judge agreed and was like, yeah, we'll exclude it from the trial. But apparently the jury didn't even need that, right? But interesting. Would have been interesting to know. Okay. So Erin was charged, obviously, with the murders of Don and Gail Patterson, Heather Wilkinson, the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, and then before the trial got started, there were going to be, I think, 3 attempted murder charges in regards to Simon Patterson. So there's a pre-trial for the judge to hear all this evidence about, why the prosecution and the state believes that Erin killed the Pattersons and Heather Wilkinson, and the evidence that they believed showed she had attempted to kill Ian Wilkinson and Simon Patterson. So during the pretrial, Simon Patterson talked about this, and he revealed that he believed Erin had tried to poison him 4 to 5 times in the 2 years prior to the lunch where his parents had gotten sick. And on 4 occasions after eating food Erin had prepared for him, he'd ended up in the hospital, and he almost died twice. So obviously, at some point, Simon Patterson's like, what the hell is going on here? Why am I keep getting sick? Why do I keep having these GI issues? Why am I becoming violently ill for no reason? And he started to wonder what the hell was going on. So that's when he began putting together a spreadsheet detailing the dates of when he would get violently ill, and then what else happened on those days so he could try to narrow it down. And that's when he figured out he got violently ill every time he consumed food that Erin prepared for him and served him. Okay. Now, none of this stuff apparently is available in Australia, by the way. Because it was suppressed from the trial, you can't find it in Australia. At least that's what people online are saying. But obviously, here in the United States, we can see it, and that's why a VPN comes in clutch, I will say, so that you're not only having access to information that your country deems worthy of you knowing. People should know this. And I have to go to my notes for this because there was a lot, and I want to make sure I get it all right. Okay, so Simon put together the spreadsheet, keeping track of the dates. And he found that in November 2021, he and Erin were planning to go on a family trip to Wilson's Promontory in Southeast Victoria. It's a beauty spot. They're going to go camping there. And this was because, he and Erin were still on good terms, obviously. They're still raising their children together. They're still co-parenting. They're still doing things together as a family. And he said the day before they left, Erin fed him penne bolognese from a Tupperware container that she had in the refrigerator. And the next morning, he started throwing up. He was sick the entire time in the car on the way there, and he had to be admitted to the hospital where doctors found high levels of creatine in his blood, which indicated impending kidney failure. And after 5 days of being on an IV drip, he stabilized and he was discharged. In May of 2021, they planned a camping trip to Lake Eldon National Park, and Erin made Simon a curry dish their second night there. He was sick within hours of eating it. He said, quote, "At first I felt hot, especially in my head, and that led to feeling nauseous, and that led to me quite suddenly needing to vomit, and then after vomiting, I started having diarrhea," end quote. Also, a dash cam video of Simon being driven to a hospital in the nearby town of Mansfield was played during the pretrial. Now, Simon was discharged from the hospital, but then he collapsed when he returned home. He had to be rushed back to the hospital where surgeons performed 3 life-saving operations that basically ended up with a large portion of his bowel being removed. He was in a coma for 16 days, and he stayed in ICU for 3 weeks. On one occasion, his family was called in to say goodbye to him because doctors thought he was going to die. He didn't die. He got better after coming out of the coma, and then after coming out of the coma, because he was still weak and, still needed help, he then stayed at Erin's for 3 weeks so she could take care of him as he recovered. And then in July of 2022, Erin made Simon a special meal, a beef stew, which he ate for lunch. And I think we talked about this in the last video. She had made him something for lunch and then dropped it off to him at work, and he ate it. And that night he got sick again and had to go to the hospital again. And then in September of 2022, they did a return camping trip to Wilson's Promontory, and Erin made him a chicken wrap. So he ate the chicken wrap, and then Simon said he started to vomit and lost muscle function, saying, quote, "By the end, I could only move my neck, tongue, and lips," end quote. This is when he was at the hospital and he was suffering from all these violent fits, and he lost muscle control. Now, like I said, the spreadsheet showed Simon that each time he'd been sick, it was after eating something Erin made for him. And in late 2022, Simon told his doctor, his primary care physician, Dr. Chris Ford, that he was afraid his wife, Erin, was trying to poison him. And so he had resolved to avoid any unnecessary contact with her. He then listed himself as single on his tax return in November. We know that. And then in the spring of 2023, Simon started telling family members that he believed Erin was trying to poison him. He confided this in his father, Don, and Don told Simon, hey, don't share these concerns too widely, because he felt it could create issues in the way people saw and related to Erin and the family, the Patterson family in general. Simon testified during the pretrial that in February of 2023, Erin had given him a batch of cookies that she said her daughter made for him. And Simon didn't eat the cookies right away, right? Because he's already thinking that Erin's trying to poison him. So he didn't eat the cookies right away. But then over the next few days, Erin kept messaging him and pestering him. Did you eat the cookies yet? Did you eat the cookies yet? And Simon saw this, rightly so, as a red flag. So he threw the cookies out. But now he was like, I wish I'd gotten them tested, because I do believe they were poisoned, because she was so insistent that I eat them and wanted to know if I had eaten them yet. It was just weird. Now, after this, Simon told his brother and a sister that he suspected Erin had repeatedly tried to poison him. And his brother Matthew testified during the pretrial that Simon said he would, quote, probably need to be a little careful around interaction with Erin, end quote. And I don't know if Simon is telling Matthew that he has to be a little careful around interacting with Erin, or if Simon is saying for himself, I need to be a little bit more careful around my interactions with Erin. But either way, he clearly was afraid, and he had told his doctor that he believed Erin was lacing his food with antifreeze or some similar toxin. Later, he told a family member that his symptoms were consistent with ingesting either rat poison or hemlock, which is a deadly plant. And like I said, during the pretrial, Simon had suggested that Erin might be on the spectrum because her empathetic behavior in public was different than who she was in private. And he said, quote, "I think Erin is very good at relating to people. She learned how to do that the way a high-functioning Asperger's does. So the way she presents is high-functioning. She knows how to appear to be enjoying interaction," end quote. Because Simon had told his family that he thought Erin was trying to poison him, because they saw him become sick time and time again. Apparently, the Pattersons immediately suspected that Erin had poisoned them when they got sick after lunch. And once again, this was in the pretrial. We did not hear about this in the regular trial. And apparently, Don Patterson was so convinced that Erin had poisoned him, he arrived at the hospital with his own vomit in a container, saying he wanted to give it to the police because he felt that it could be significant evidence of what he thought was a deliberate poisoning. That's crazy. That's crazy, right? So now we look back at the evidence and we kind of see, why was Simon so uncomfortable going to that lunch? Well, because he already felt that Erin was trying to poison him. So, of course, he doesn't want to go to her house and eat her food. He was very suspicious that he did not feel comfortable. And it also starts to make sense why maybe the dynamic between Gail and Don Patterson and Erin Patterson started to cool and get a little distant around that November time when Simon had been going to his doctor and he was sure that he was being poisoned and he was telling his family and friends this. Maybe the Pattersons were like, hey, we'll just kind of like cool things with her for a little bit because we don't feel super comfortable either. So it probably had nothing to do with them being on Simon's side or trying to help him out or trying to turn against her or betray her despite everything she'd ever done for them. It was more like, yeah, our son believes that Erin's trying to poison him. We've seen with our own eyes that he's been getting very, very sick and having to go to the hospital, and he almost died twice. It could be true, so it's better for us to just keep our distance right now, right? That makes sense. Now, I also want to talk about, before we leave, the true crime Facebook group that Erin was in. Remember when we first talked about it, it ended up being that it was a much larger Facebook group, and it was called Keep Kelly Lane Behind Bars. Now, there is reports from some people, nothing like, I guess, official, but there's reports that Erin was a big-time internet troll. So they believe she had multiple Facebook accounts, maybe up to 20 Facebook accounts that she would use to like troll people. If they disagreed with her or if they said something that she didn't like, she would use these troll accounts to like go after them on the internet. And apparently the Keep Kelly Lane Behind Bars Facebook group kind of fractured, and there was just like a handful of members left behind, and that was the core group that Erin Patterson would communicate with on the regular. And when a lot of the members left that group, and then Erin Patterson got arrested, the old members who had run-ins with Erin, who believed that she'd been trolling them with these fake accounts, they created a new Facebook group called Keep Erin Patterson Behind Bars. So, I mean, she didn't make a lot of friends. Erin didn't make a lot of friends. Even the people who she talked to in her Facebook group that were like kind of talking to her on a regular basis were like, yeah, she could be intense. Yeah, she could be intense. She's very smart. She could be intense and like go a little far, get very intense. Yeah. So apparently after an online disagreement, Erin was so mad with somebody that she like contacted their employer and tried to like get them in trouble or have them fired. So that's allegedly why these people in this Facebook group didn't like her and why they started this Keep Erin Patterson Behind Bars Facebook group after she was arrested, which, let's be honest, is kind of hilarious. And as we already know, Erin Patterson was found guilty of these charges by a jury. So yeah, Yeah, I mean, there was plenty of evidence. There's plenty of evidence to show that she did this intentionally. And the main evidence, I believe, is that she didn't get sick. And you eating a whole cake and then throwing up hours later is not a medical or scientifically backed reason for why you didn't get sick from death cap mushroom poisoning. It just doesn't make any sense. She threw those plates out. She tried to get rid of the food dehydrator. Now, why didn't she get rid of the leftover beef Wellington? Why didn't she get rid of the leftover beef Wellington? I will never understand that. I think, personally, it's because she had hoped that Simon was coming to lunch and she saved it for him. And maybe she was like, well, I will give him his leftover beef Wellington, his portion, and I'll like send it home I'll send it to him, or I'll give it to him the next time he comes to pick up the kids, and then he'll eat it and he'll also get sick, right? Maybe she was hoping to do that, so she hung on to it until everybody was sick and ended up in the hospital, and then she threw it out in her garbage because, I mean, at that point, she'd already been to the landfill a bunch of times, and she can't go again because she's got to bring her kids to school, and she's got to do this, and she's got to do that. She threw it in the garbage, and then the police collected it before she could take that evidence to the landfill and get rid of it as well. I think that's probably the only option at that point, because that would be stupid to throw away the dehydrator, throw away the plates, throw away the box of the dehydrator, but keep the leftovers with the death cap mushrooms in your garbage at home. That doesn't make any sense. Now, obviously, we know Erin Patterson found guilty. She's going to prison. But she doesn't stop her shenanigans in prison, which is crazy to me. So while she was waiting for her trial and while her trial was going on, Erin Patterson was staying at the Murray unit at Melbourne's maximum security women's prison, the Dame Phyllis Frost Center. And she was cell number 29. And in the cells around her, Erin's got some pretty high profile prison buddies or prison neighbors. She's got in cell 28, Malka Leifer, who basically was an ex-headmistress who sexually assaulted schoolgirls who were in her care in Melbourne. That's who she's got right next to her. She also had in cell 32, Samantha Azzopardi, a career con woman and child kidnapper. And then in cell 30, Lydia Abdumalik, who is apparently a notorious catfish stalker. And it really gives me Chicago vibes, like all these women in prison. And I'd never even heard of most of these people, so I want to look into them because this is crazy. They did some crazy things. But despite all of these horrible women being in this prison with Erin Patterson, according to an inmate who recently left the unit and spoke with news.com.au, Erin was the most hated of them all. This article says the inmate who kept detailed diary notes about every incident and every personality behind bars said Patterson was blamed for making a fellow prisoner so sick that this prisoner was vomiting everywhere and had to be seen by the medical team. Quote, "This is something I wrote in my notes," the former inmate told news.com.au. "I was talking with another inmate and asked if I could borrow her mayonnaise. She just laughed and joked about me poisoning it like Erin Patterson did. I was like, what the F? And she told me the story about how prison officers found mayonnaise in Erin's room that was allegedly used to poison one of the inmates. She went to medical and was vomiting everywhere. She was saying that the mushroom lady cell was searched and they found chemistry books with pages tagged, including sections on natural remedies. This was all part of the investigation into the poisoning of the inmate. But the former inmate who spoke with the news outlet has a theory about the alleged poisoning behind bars, and she believes Patterson wasn't responsible. She said that Erin Patterson was moved to the Gordon unit while the investigation for poisoning took place. And the former inmate who kept a diary noted the date of July 29, 2024, and she writes that the prison guards found 2 bottles of mayonnaise in Erin's clothes basket when they searched her room. A Justice Department spokeswoman said there is no evidence to support that there's been any contaminated food or suspected poisonings at Dame Phyllis Frost Center, but the former inmate said the incident 100% happened. So basically, I guess this former inmate is like, yeah, somebody did get poisoned, but she said Erin may not have been responsible for it. Like maybe she got set up or something, but I don't know about that. It's possible she got set up. Everybody would have known what she was in there for. So maybe the inmates thought it would be like a fun game or something to like set her up and have this like, ooh, the mushroom poisoner is poisoning again in prison. Now she's the prison poisoner. Who knows? But would Erin Patterson do something like this? Yeah, I believe she would actually. But the former inmate did give some insight into where Erin Patterson fit in the pecking order at the correctional institution. And she said that Erin was right at the bottom. She said, quote, "She has not climbed. She is hated and will need to be monitored by staff constantly. Nobody gives a shit about what she's done. They hate her because she's entitled, arrogant, demanding, and rude. The thing with Erin that I noticed when I lived with her is that she is super intelligent, likes to make people feel like they're dumb. She's very manipulative. She gets fixated on things and doesn't see the mistakes that she makes. She mimics and makes fun of people, looks down at people. She is exactly like Malka Leifer. Hopefully they get a cell next to each other. That would be great to watch." End quote. They did get a cell next to each other. The former inmate said that Erin is crazy smart and she is said to spend time behind bars knitting for her kids. But yeah, this checks out with who Erin Patterson came off as during the trial, who she came off as in those Facebook messages and the messages to Simon and his family. She's kind of a know-it-all. She thinks that she knows what's best for everybody. She wants everybody to just kind of go along with it without questioning her, and she gets upset with them when they don't. There's a lot of talk online about Erin Patterson potentially having a personality disorder, like NPD, maybe being even like a psychopath. I don't know. I just don't know enough about her to even go down that path. And I don't think that a lot of people do know who she is. I think even Simon Patterson said that he doesn't believe anyone really knows who the real Erin is. And so I think it would be difficult outside of being a medical professional who has the ability to sit down and talk to Erin over multiple sessions. It would be very difficult to diagnose her or even speculate on what's wrong with her. But no doubt, something's wrong with her. Something is wrong with her, because I'm sorry you felt betrayed by your in-laws. I'm sorry you felt betrayed by your husband. This is not the answer, okay? Heather Wilkinson and Ian Wilkinson didn't even do anything to you, man. They didn't even do anything to you. And it would make a lot of sense that Erin wanted to poison Simon and get him out of the picture. And she would do this under the guise of a lunch where he might feel more safe. Like, well, she's not going to poison us all. She won't poison us all, right? When in fact, that's exactly what she did do. And what she would do, she would go to those lengths to get back at him. And why? What caused her to feel that way? What's going on in her head? I don't know. I really don't even know if I want to know. But let me know what you think about this. What do you think now that it's all said and done? Erin's guilty. She's probably going to spend the rest of her life in prison. What do you think about this? What do you think about what we talked about today? Please let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it. Share it if you think it's worth sharing. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I cannot wait to chat with you guys about this case in the comments. Thank you so much for being here. Stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe. I'll see you very, very soon.